That was a pretty good fight night card. Cory Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. A lot of decisions though. A total of 9 decisions with 4 finishes throughout the whole card. But I do think some of the performances were fun to watch. Technical, competitive fights. And let's start with that main event. Umar Nurmagomedov defeats Cory Sandhagen by a decision. The guy's legit. I mean, he's never fought a ranked fighter before. And he just went up against and beat, for his first 5-round fight, Cory Sandhagen, the number 2 fighter in the world. Not only beat him, but outstruck him as well. That surprised me a bit. I thought that Cory would be the better striker of the two. Now, Umar's wrestling threat is going to give him an advantage on the feet, but even technically in the stand-up, he was defensively responsible. He was landing good counter shots when Cory was trying to get his way in. Cory stayed in the pocket a little too long at times, and it seemed like he was expecting takedowns when they weren't coming. Umar's timing on his takedowns were excellent, but Cory improved a lot with his takedown defense. Like, you could tell his training camp revolved around stopping takedowns more than anything else, or getting up from the bottom. He constantly was rolling whenever Umar shot him for a takedown. Umar wasn't able to get the whole back most of the time, but he was able to land enough strikes and get a takedown to win the rounds. Cory didn't really show much urgency up until like the end of the 4th round into the 5th, which is a common thing amongst many strikers in the sport right now. Cory Sandhagen showed it, Vera showed it against Deiveson Figueiredo, Leon Edwards showed it against Bilal Muhammad. They try to be way too technical, and it's like they're hitting pads. And it's completely understandable why Cory Sandhagen didn't want to get like super aggressive and wild, because he could get taken to the ground and Umar can ride that out to a decision. But at the same time, like, yo, you're losing the fight. Your corner is telling you you lost every round. Get out there and try to knock this guy out. Going into a 5th round of a fight that Cory's losing, he should be coming out there with flying knees, high kicks, crazy stuff, right? In the beginning of the round, he did try some stuff, like he went for a takedown and then disengaged for a big hook, but didn't show much else in his arsenal, and Umar was still able to outstrike him. Like, Umar is absolutely high level at this point. He's still very young. His striking never really looked this good before, and his wrestling is always going to be a major advantage in most of his fights. Man, I'm a big Cory Sandhagen fan. I really like the way he usually fights, especially his striking style. Not too much of a fan of how he fought like Chito and Rob Font, but love the Peter Yan fight, which is still my favorite fight of all time. I love this fight with TJ Dillashaw, some of the knockouts he got before with flying knees and spinning heel kicks and stuff, and to see him get so close to that title shot and finally get a matchup between him and Sean O'Malley, and then he loses, taking a chance against Umar. It's tough because Cory is probably never going to get a title shot now. He's just not on the level of some of those guys at the top, right? Umar's better than him. Merab is probably better than him. O'Malley's probably better. Cory Sandhagen is probably going to be in the top 5 for the rest of his career without ever fighting for a title. But when we're talking about Umar Nurmagomedov, can he be the champ? He has the tools to do so. He's well-rounded. He's good enough in the stand-up, right? Competent there where he will not get hit by some big shots. He has good counterpunches, good movement, very good footwork, fast, athletic, can go 5 rounds. Even though it wasn't a fast-paced fight, he didn't look tired at all. So I'm pretty sure his cardio is going to be good against someone like Sean O'Malley. Merab puts on a very different kind of pace, and it seems like most fighters cannot keep up with him. But I do think that Umar beats Merab. Defending the takedowns, I think he's a better striker than Merab is. His high kicks would be a very big problem. He's also bigger than Merab. And the thing with O'Malley, I think O'Malley has a better chance of beating Umar than Merab does, just because of that sniping factor, right? He's so powerful, so precise, the best footwork in the division, as we know. Footwork is the first phase of takedown defense, and he strikes from long range compared to Cory, who only really kicks from there. Cory likes to punch while he's kind of in the pocket or in close. O'Malley does everything from far range, and has the footwork to keep the fight there. But I don't know, man. I like Umar's chances against Merab, but the O'Malley fight is very close. It might be recency bias because the fight just happened, but I think I might lean to Umar beating O'Malley. He might just be too well-rounded, as well as physically stronger than O'Malley is. Good footwork, fast, decent defense, doesn't get wild, so O'Malley could counter him or something like that. Yeah, man, Umar is very, very good. So Umar Nurmagomedov might be getting a title shot. His rise in the rankings is very similar to Sean O'Malley's, right? O'Malley was lower in the top 15. He got a chance to fight the number 1 contender in Peter Yan, beat him in a very close, razor-thin decision, and then got a title shot off of that. Umar, lower in the top 15, right? He was number 10. He beat the number 2 ranked fighter. He's probably going to get a title shot afterward. If it's not Deiveson Figueiredo, right? Deiveson's the only other guy that could get a title shot. Could. But I think they are going to go with Umar over Deiveson. And as for Cory Sandhagen, they could probably do Cory versus Henry Cejudo, or him versus Deiveson, maybe something like that. Well, actually, I like the Cory and Cejudo fight better. I think that should be the next fight. And then we go to the co-main event. Shara Magomedov defeats Michal Oleksiejczuk by a decision. Magomedov just showed to be the better striker. He got taken down a couple times throughout the fight, but Oleksiejczuk just was rarely able to find the right angle to land his punches. Magomedov was constantly moving around the cage, showed decent footwork, flashy kicks, caught him with a side kick to the face, and even at one point rocked Oleksiejczuk with the right hand. But notice that Oleksiejczuk wasn't hurt enough where he should have chased a finish or something, right? His opponent is a veteran. He got rocked slightly, and instead of chasing and getting wild for a knockout, he kicked his leg, started attacking the body and stuff. Very high fight IQ there from Shara Magomedov. Because if he chased the knockout there, I think Oleksiejczuk was solid enough to potentially find some like knockout punch if Shara opened himself up too much. But the fight had a similar pattern throughout the whole thing. From the first round to the third, Magomedov just constantly moved around. Outstriking Oleksiejczuk was way too fast, and he has to get a ranked opponent after that, right? Because Oleksiejczuk, I always see him as like right outside the top 15. I think the winner of Chris Curtis and Kevin Holland makes sense for Magomedov because he should be taking a little bit of time off. This guy fought 2 times in like a month and a half, like very active fighter, and that's what we all want to see. Active fighters constantly fighting, but I think he should wait for the winner of Chris Curtis and Kevin Holland. That should get him into the top 15 if he beats one of those guys, which I do think he would win against. The only thing about Kevin Holland is he's got a submission game, right? If he takes down Magomedov at any point of the fight, Kevin Holland could win by a submission. Deiveson Figueiredo has to be pound for pound the hardest puncher we've ever seen. For a flyweight or a former flyweight to go up to the bantamweight division and carry that much power is absolutely ridiculous. He's the first fighter to drop Chito. We are only talking about a knockdown, but Chito's been hit to the head by some of the biggest punchers in bantamweight history, essentially. I mean, Sean O'Malley intercepted his downward head movement with a knee flush clean to the face, and Chito didn't get dropped. But the right hand of Figueiredo, the guy has the power of Kratos. I mean, we all knew he was the biggest puncher ever in the flyweight division, but he may be the biggest puncher at bantamweight too. Now, we've seen a transition like this before with John Lineker, right? John Lineker, before Figgy, was the biggest puncher at flyweight, and he was also arguably the biggest puncher at bantamweight when he came up too. But Figgy's power is just different. Maybe Chito's chin softened up from the O'Malley fight. Now, usually he's been going to the wrestling more at 135. He wasn't as much of a grappler at 125, and maybe because he understands these guys are bigger, he can't risk walking them down like he was those smaller guys at 125. So he's a lot more calculated with his well-rounded skill set. He's always been a great grappler, and the fact that he is so well-rounded is going to be such a problem for all these other bantamweights. Even though he is 36 years old, the guy is still in his prime. Every fighter's prime is different, and Figueiredo is continuing the peak of his athletic ability. It's insane. In the beginning of the fight, he was able to get takedowns, have a bit of control, but then Chito's takedown defense got better throughout the fight. He did start slow. Chito just fighting at a slow pace is hindering his entire fighting career. Even though he knows at this point that he needs to be more aggressive and fight faster, he's still way too slow. The guy has 5-round cardio, and in a 3-round fight, why is he fighting like he's about to go 5 rounds? I don't understand. And he was having way more success when he was aggressive against Figueiredo. He landed a strong jab, good body shots, flying knees and stuff, almost caught him with a clean spinning wheel kick. It's so frustrating to see these kind of fighters that have so much power in their strikes. They're technically on point, but they just don't let their hands go. They don't let their kicks fly out there. They don't get aggressive when they should be, and they know they have to be. I don't know what happened to Chito. Like, did he get knocked out in sparring one time, and ever since he's been very gun shy? I don't know why he fights so slow like that and just stays defensive. His defense is solid and he's got a great chin. But when you're so defensive for so long in a fight, the punches are eventually going to land regardless of how good you are. And because he doesn't amount any offense, he's given the entire control of the fight to his opponent. And against like Figueiredo, who can strike with him competitively, even beating him in that area, as well as grapple with him, he can't just sit back like that. Like, even the way Figueiredo was fighting, he had a pattern of what he was doing. He land kicks from outside range, land maybe a jab or a body shot, and then go over for a takedown whenever Chito tried to retaliate. Those are the moments where Chito should be timing a knee, an uppercut, use better footwork to get on an angle from Figueiredo so it throws off the takedown as well as opens up a shot for him. But he was rarely doing that. He did it once in the fight that I can remember, but it was him moving backwards, which is going to be a lot harder to land those kind of strikes and get the angles that you want. He was moving straight back into the fence, threw a knee when he thought that Figueiredo was going to go for a takedown. It almost landed flush to the head, but Figgy was still able to get the takedown and just take control of the fight. But all in all, Figueiredo was able to outstrike him, outgrapple him, won the majority of the rounds. I think the second round could have went to Chito, but it was a close round. First and third definitely went to Deiveson, and I think he's one win away from a title shot. I would love to see him fight Peter Yan. That was a fight they were talking about before, or at least it was rumored. That fight would be awesome. And as for Chito Vera, maybe they could do Chito versus Cejudo or Chito versus Song Yadong. Either of those fights would be very fun. And then we go to Michael Chiesa submitting Tony Ferguson in the first round. Tony's just old, and I'm happy he kind of retired. Bro, half retired. Like, Who does that besides Tony, I guess? He put one glove down, kept one for himself because he says he might come back to fight. Tony's had a legendary career. He's done amazing things, was an interim champion, 12-win streak in the lightweight division, going up against guys like Anthony Pettis, Don Cerrone, Rafa dos Anjos, Ezra Barboza, like a bunch of really good fighters. But the sad thing about Tony Ferguson's career is that a lot of the fans that started watching during the COVID era didn't get to watch Tony at his peak, when he was as creative and as athletic as he was. One of the best performances in the lightweight division I've ever seen was him against Rafa dos Anjos, and the build-up to the Khabib fights were legendary. Even though the fight didn't happen, those press conferences, the rivalry just in general was so hyped. They had so much energy around them. All the fight posters that the fans were making. I mean, the most anticipated fight in UFC history was Khabib versus Tony. But a lot of the new fans are going to remember Tony for his 8-loss streak, which is the longest in UFC history. Even beat BJ Penn's. That's crazy. At one point, Tony had the longest win streak in lightweight history, and now he has the longest losing streak, both at lightweight and in totality throughout the entire UFC. But I'm very happy Tony's retiring, or at least he understands that he's at a point in his career where he should retire. Because before, he was being very delusional about where he was at. Older, so much damage to the head, clearly wasn't the same guy athletically and technically, but just kept wanting to fight the best fighters in the world. Like, he should never have fought Michael Chandler. He should never have fought Bobby Green and Nate Diaz. Tony Ferguson should have probably retired. If not after the Charles Oliveira fight, definitely after the Beneil Dariush fight. That's what I think. By the time he fought Beneil Dariush, he was clearly not the same fighter anymore. Against Charles, he had moments where he looked decent and against one of the best lightweights in the world, but Beneil Dariush isn't exactly like an elite lightweight, and Tony looked way worse in that fight. Way more passive. The guy was like not wanting to fight Dariush. He wasn't throwing punches back. He was just moving around in the cage, being very defensive, which is completely against Tony Ferguson's usual style. He never fought like that. His defense was always his offense. I've never seen Tony run around and turn his back to the opponent without throwing anything. No spinning elbows, no punches, no kicks, just moving away from Dariush of all fighters. Like, he fought Justin Gaethje, went toe-to-toe with the guy, almost knocked him on the second round, even though he got dominated after the second round. At least he was going back and forth with Tony. Against Dariush, though, completely gun-shy. At that point in his career, I thought that's where he should have retired. But we'll always remember Tony Ferguson for all the excitement he brought to his fights, how much he entertained the fans. Everybody loves Tony. In his peak, one of the most exciting lightweights we've ever seen, and also one of the greatest lightweights of all time as well. But the performance from Michael Chiesa was very dominant. I mean, short fight, pressuring off of his right lead hand, like he was keeping it out there wide. Tony was fighting very slow. He wasn't reacting to the punches that well. He said that Chiesa's punches were tricky and get him off guard, but Chiesa wasn't really doing anything that technical like that until he got on the ground, right? He was able to get Tony's back very easily and choke him out, but what Michael Chiesa did in the stand-up wouldn't beat anybody in the top 10. So dominant performance by Michael Chiesa, and I'm happy to see that Tony Ferguson is at least considering retirement. And I think a rematch with Neil Magny would be a good fight for Michael Chiesa. Magny's ranked above him. Chiesa beat him before, and it would be an opportunity for Chiesa to get back into the top 15. Mackenzie Dern looked amazing in this fight. Way better than she's been performing for a couple years now, it seems like. Her boxing looked better, her jab was there, and way better distance management than before. I mean, we're used to seeing Mackenzie Dern fighting like a windmill, almost like Juliana Pena in a way. Punches flying at all angles, whether they land on the opponent or not, random firing all over the place. But this time, striking looked a lot more composed. She went for a good double leg in the third round, I believe, had an arm throw in the first round, which works a lot better for women's MMA, had a nasty armbar while laying back fists, and I love her mount. I love when she's in side control. Those positions suit her very well. She's very dominant on top, good control, and very flexible. If the opponent moves anywhere, she can pounce right on them with any kind of submission that she wants. If I knew Mackenzie Dern was going to fight this well, if I knew that she was going to be as composed as when she fought like Nina Nunes back in the day, I probably would have picked her to win this fight, but I expected the Mackenzie Dern we've been seeing for the past few years. But hey, good win for Mackenzie Dern, man. And as for her next opponent, she's pretty much fought everybody above her that isn't fighting for a title. So like Suarez, I think, should be fighting Zhang Weili. And everybody else, Yan Xiaonan, Verna, Jessica Andrade, Amanda Lemos, Marina Rodriguez. Mackenzie Dern fought all of those fighters. Maybe you do a rematch with Yan Xiaonan because that fight was very close. I've just realized how many ranked fighters Mackenzie Dern has fought. It's actually kind of crazy. Almost the entire top 10 she has fought. And for Loopy Godinez, the only available opponent that's in the top 15 that's ranked below Lupita Godinez is Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So I guess that's a good, logical matchup for both fighters. What about Yoel Alvarez putting on a masterclass performance against Elves Brener? I mean, from beginning to end, he was beating Brener at every part of that fight. On the feet, Brener was outclassed. On the ground, he got caught in a Darce choke. Brener seemed like he didn't know how to get on the inside of Alvarez. I mean, he was scaling around the cage the entire fight, throwing out techniques just to see if they would work instead of setting them up correctly. Like, you would see Brener scaling the cage and throw out an overhand. Maybe this'll work. Now a leg kick, maybe this'll work. Maybe the spinning back fist will work. Maybe this lunging hook works. And the reason why he was put in that kind of fight was, number one, he just didn't have the skill or the understanding on dealing with the range of Yoel Alvarez, and Alvarez is using his reach very well. The right straights were so on point, and the high kicks. Then eventually Brener got so desperate for some kind of knockout or, to come back in the fight, which he should have done. He lost the first 2 rounds. So to do something a little bit more risky in trying to get the knockout was probably the move for him to make, Instead of just doing what he was doing for the past 2 rounds, it's better for him to change up the game plan and get a lot more aggressive with his hands, throwing haymakers, hooks, whatever he's got to do. But at the same time, he opened himself up to get countered by the big left hand of Yoel Alvarez. And that started the finish. And Alvarez even brought back the vintage Vanderlei knee combination in the clinch. Crazy to see that work in modern MMA, but he had to hurt Brener before he was able to land those combinations on him. Because he did it twice. He had him in the clinch, kneeing him. Brener got out of there, re-clinched him, kneeing again. Eventually, Brener took way too many knees to the head, fell to the ground, and finished off with ground and pound. And also to note, in the end of that first round, Alvarez had him in that Darce choke, but Brener was very composed in there. You could tell this guy got put in a Darce choke probably every single day training with Charles Oliveira. He was not panicking at all. Inside a Darce choke from Alvarez, who's got those really long arms. Yeah, Brener was not submitting to anything in that fight. But he did get finished for the first time in his career. And by a TKO too. Guram couldn't finish him. Earlby dropped him but couldn't finish him. Just goes to show you that El Conquistador strength is stronger than caveman strength. But amazing performance by Yoel Alvarez, man. And great gritty effort, I guess, from Elves Brener. Even though he was outclassed skillfully throughout the entire fight. And then we go to Azamat Murzakanov, TKOing Alonzo Menifield. Left hand for days, knees whenever Menifield was lowering his posture, but whipping those left hands to the head, to the body, and backstepping away from everything Menifield was going forward with. I mean, just a clear skill gap. Menifield reminds me of like an athlete who's picking up the techniques of a fight, He's a very good athlete, very explosive, strong, powerful, but when he goes up against someone who has a high understanding of skill in the light heavyweight division, he just clearly outmatched. I mean, Azamat's like slight cut of the angles and a simple long backstep was giving Menifield so many issues on getting aggressive. It was like Menifield was thrown off that Azamat wasn't standing right in front of him. But the thing is, Menifield said before the fight that he was coming into this one trying to be a lot more patient than he was when he fought Olberg, and that completely was the wrong game plan for him because he should have been a little bit more aggressive here. He took way too much damage before he was able to come back. The whole first round, Menifield didn't really do anything. He kind of just stood there with his guard up high, taking shots to the body and to the head. And the crazy thing was, the first time he tried to attack Azamat, he got countered by the left hand. Like, that is the most discouraging thing. When you can't find your openings because you are so passive and you're trying to be more technical than you were in your last fight, because you got KO'd within like 15 seconds, whatever it was, then when you try to adjust a bit and be a little bit more aggressive and you get countered hard for it, it's like, okay, what do I really do now? This guy's clearly way better than Menifield. But I was surprised how much damage Menifield was taking before he got dropped. And you could see when Azamat started exploding on him with the hook and then finish him off on the ground, he just had enough of it. He's like, yo, let me just get this guy out of here. He's just a punching bag at this point. So great performance by Azamat Murzakanov, still undefeated, still getting his knockouts, and he looked amazing in this fight, man. What about Kaue Fernandes? Amazing performance against Muhammad Yahya, destroying that lead leg, and then when Yahya got desperate for some kind of offense, he got countered hard, dropped, and TKO'd. Simple one-sided performance for Fernandes. So many hematomas in Yahya's leg, it looked like an alien was about to pop out. And it's crazy because Yahya said that he wanted to be more aggressive in this fight and try to get a finish, but it looked like he didn't understand his opponent too much because Fernandes is known for his kicks. And Yahya did not even look to check them, really. He wasn't trying to defend them, wasn't using good footwork or switching stances correctly when the kicks were coming, so it can cause him to overextend and then he can counter behind those. Like, it looked like Yahya was focused on what he was going to do offensively instead of understanding his opponent's strengths and weaknesses. And that ultimately made an easy fight for Fernandes. And Fernandes is just the more skilled fighter at the end of the day. Great performance by him, man. Then the Blob King, the level 100 Blob, Shamil Gaziev, lays his way to a decision, defeating Dontale. This guy had 12 minutes of control time in a 15-minute fight, and he didn't even gas out. Like, that was the biggest thing against Shamil Gaziev, was horrible cardio. This guy cannot fight long at all. But his cardio seemed to be way better. Now, he was like the A side of the fight in a way, right? He was the dominant hammer in a sense. So it's not as gassing to be the hammer in the fight as it is to be the nail, especially when you're laying on top of someone like Dontale. Shamil doesn't have to use as much energy. It's usually the big guy on the bottom. But yeah, a very boring fight, as is the usual with the blobs of the heavyweight division. And Dontale, like, I don't know how he's fighting ranked heavyweights. I have no idea. Then we go to Guram, defeating Jordan by a decision. This fight was really good, man. And shout out to Jordan for stepping up on short notice like that. Put on a good performance against Guram, dropped him in the first round. Did as good as anybody would ask of him against someone on the level of Guram for his UFC debut. Jordan's going to go pretty far, I think, in the lightweight division. I expect him to have a grappling advantage against Guram, which is actually interesting because Guram was the one that was wrestling a lot more, or holding top control very well. You could definitely tell he's been training a lot with Hamza for this fight. And Jordan was the one that dropped the kickboxer. He threw off Guram's timing. He was like faking with the right hand, showing his shoulder a little bit. And then before he fired it out there, gave another quick feint, right hand behind it, dropped Guram. It looked like he was about to knock him out, but Guram was intelligent enough to hold on to Jordan and also use the mission control guard to kind of stalemate the action, slow it down for himself to get back into the fight. And then in the third round, Guram showed his grappling skill. When he was going for the back, he got way too high, right? He made a mistake there and was about to fall off of Jordan over his head, but then improvised, adjusted the position by kicking off the cage, which threw momentum backwards, allowing Guram to get the hooks in. A very high level move right there. Guram did have a fence grab in the third round, which did help him. I don't know why the referees just aren't on that. It happens so often now. With the new gloves, like, a lot more cheating is going on in fights, and the referees just let it happen. These are the kind of high level fights outside the top 15 that we want to see. So Jordan showed beautiful striking skill, and Guram showed improved wrestling. With a full training camp, maybe Jordan could have pulled off a win, but at the same time, that would give Guram more time to prepare for Jordan's style. It would be a different fight if they both had a training camp against each other, but maybe in the future we get to see a rematch. Amazing fight from both fighters. Sam Hughes defeats Victoria Dudakova by a decision. Not a good fight, no memes from it. She wrestled very hard in the beginning of the fight, gassed herself out, and she was talking about her gas tank before. Like, she said her cardio was just so much better now. Just for her to gas out against someone like Sam Hughes. What an upset that was. Jai Herbert defeats Rolando Bendoya by a decision. Herbert showing good footwork, precise right hand from distance. I liked Herbert's distance management in this fight. Cedric Dumas defeats Dennis Tululin by a decision. This fight wasn't bad. Dumas landing a lot of long jabs as Dennis just walked into all of them. Decent takedowns here and there, good control in the cage. Tululin constantly throwing that flying knee. But there was that one cool reverse from Tululin in the third round when Dumas was going for the single leg takedown, I think, and Tululin like literally flipped him over. Rolled with that momentum and just flipped Dumas, getting on top of him after. So pretty decent card. I enjoyed some of the decision wins, even though there were a lot of them. The Gaziev and Sam Hughes fights were really bad compared to the other ones, but I think it's a solid fight night card overall. I'd probably give it like a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, something like that. And I hope you guys enjoy the fights as well. And if you did, make sure to give this video a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.